Have you ever played this game? You wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, you look at the clock, and you say, oh no, I have to be up in 3 or 4 hours. The next thing you know, you look at the clock, I have to be up in 2 hours, then I have to be up in 10 minutes. It's a horrible game. What we're going to talk about today is how you won't have to play that game anymore. We're going to talk all about how to get the best night's sleep. And we now understand that 1 in 3 people in this country are not getting enough sleep. And sleep is not just rest. Sleep is critical for our memory, our focus, our productivity, long-term and short-term brain health. And there are things that we can do. There are new insights into how to get the best night's sleep based upon how our brain works. Hi, my name is Dr. Marc Milstein, and welcome to Best of Your Brain podcast. I'm excited to talk to you today about your sleep cycles and how those insights can really help you get the best night's sleep. Now, today's going to be all about take-home tips. But before we get there, I do just want to take a moment and talk about one of the reasons why sleep is so important. And it relates to this new insight that your brain, it's like a factory. It makes products, it makes connections every time you learn something new. But your brain also makes byproducts, waste, trash, toxins. These are like leftover chemical reactions, broken down proteins. And your brain's about 3 pounds. And in a year, your 3-pound brain makes 5 pounds of this waste, trash, and garbage. And as you can imagine, if you don't get rid of it, this waste and trash can fill up and interfere with not just how we feel, but our memory, our productivity, our long-term brain health. And as we get just a little bit older, our brain's ability to remove this waste and trash can become less efficient and effective. But this is where sleep comes in. We understand now that sleep is a critical time to really just clean our brain. Tonight, when you go to sleep, something very odd is going to happen at certain points during the night. Your brain inside your skull is going to shrink down to about 65% of its current size. Sounds like a horror movie, your brain shrinking and squeezing in your skull. But this is a good shrinking because what your brain is doing is it's acting kind of like a sponge and squeezing out all the waste, trash, and garbage that just fills up throughout the day. Imagine squeezing it out in almost like empty space. And then fluid or cerebral spinal fluid comes up from your spinal cord and washes all this trash away. So imagine your brain squeezing out the garbage and then you wash it away. We're actually calling this a brain wash. It's one of our biggest breakthroughs in brain health. And that's why sleep is so important. A key reason. Sleep is a time to just clean your brain, to protect it. So what we're going to talk about is your sleep cycles, because that's a key secret into optimize the brainwashing process. You sleep in about a 90-minute cycle, and it has 3 key steps: light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. Now, those 3 key steps, they take about 90 minutes, and then you just repeat the cycle throughout the night. Now, there's some complexities to that cycle, but we're going to highlight those 3 key steps. Now, the first stage is light sleep, and it takes about 20 to 30 minutes. And if you've ever woken up in light sleep, you feel good. You feel your best. Because if you wake up in light sleep, your brain is still active. Your 80 billion brain cells are still communicating with each other. They're still talking to each other. But if you wake up and you don't know who you are, where you are, what you are, you woke up in deep sleep. That's when your brain is off. But let me ask you this question. Do you find it's easier to fall asleep in a cool room or a warm room? Now, most people will say cool, and there's a reason for that. In order for your brain and body to transition into deeper stages of sleep, your core body temperature needs to drop. And if you've ever been in a room where you're kind of tossing and turning, it's too warm, that's your brain trying to lower your body temperature to get into these deeper stages of sleep. We actually understand that when your core temperature drops, you actually help your brain release melatonin. So something just really simple and actionable is make your room a little bit cooler. Could be air conditioning, a cooler blanket, but cool rooms help us fall asleep and stay asleep. Now, there's something we can do about 90 minutes before bed that has also been shown in hundreds of studies to help you fall asleep and stay asleep. And it's take a warm shower or a warm bath. And you might be saying, a warm shower, a warm bath, that's the opposite of what we were just talking about. You said cool rooms, but it's the timing that's so critical. Those 90 minutes allow the body to cool down. So the key insight is that if you're having trouble sleeping, what we don't want to do is take a warm shower or a warm bath right before bed. But something that can be helpful is time it so that we have those 90 minutes so that our body can cool down. That helps the brain release melatonin, helps us fall asleep. So I want to take a moment and talk to you about this study. They took a group of people and they pretty much sneezed in their faces. Now, these were volunteers. And what they found was that if the people got enough deep sleep, Those people, most of them didn't get sick. But the people who didn't get enough deep sleep, most of them did get sick. And what we realize is happening is that deep sleep is the time that we fight off colds and viruses. It's when our immune system is really optimized. So if we don't get enough deep sleep, we're just more likely to get colds and viruses. Also, deep sleep is the time that we repair our bones, our muscles grow. This is really anti aging, rejuvenating sleep. If you've heard of beauty sleep, it's a real thing. Beauty sleep is when our body is repairing UV damage from just being out in the sun. And if we don't get enough deep sleep, we can actually prematurely age both internally and externally. So we think of light sleep, brain is on. Deep sleep, brain is off, but body repair. And the last stage we need to talk about is REM sleep. That's rapid eye movement. That's when you're dreaming. REM sleep is rapid eye movement. And if you've ever slept next to a dog or another person, you see their eyes kind of going back and forth underneath their eyelids. That's REM sleep. And what's happening in REM sleep is that your brain is taking all the information that you learn throughout the day and it's making it stronger. See, when you learn something new, you make a connection between your 80 billion brain cells. And those connections, they house the memory. But tonight, when you go to sleep while you're dreaming during REM sleep, your brain is going to find all the new connections for all the new things you learned today and run electricity over those new connections, making them stronger, making them stick. So if we don't get a good night's sleep tonight, we just won't remember the things we learned today nearly as well because we miss out on that memory strengthening process. And just to highlight the importance of this, we now know that one of our big risk factors for memory loss is sleep apnea. In fact, individuals with untreated sleep apnea, on average, they lose their memory about 10 years before people who don't have sleep apnea. And I know that can sound very scary, but if we just treat the sleep apnea, that risk pretty much goes away. You see, somebody with sleep apnea could be waking up hundreds or thousands of times throughout the night, and that's disrupting that memory strengthening process. So we want to treat sleep apnea, but we also just want to optimize our sleep in general so we get that memory strengthening sleep. Now, I want to tell you a quick story about Pete Sampras. And Pete Sampras, one of the greatest tennis players that ever lived, he figured something out several years before brain scientists. And what he figured out was he was traveling around the world playing in these big tournaments, and he would check into his hotel room, and he would always bring with him black masking tape. And he would take this tape and he would cover up every little light source in his hotel room. You name it, he covered it up. You know, that little red light on the TV when the TV's off, covered it up. And he said if he did this, if he essentially slept in true darkness, he played better the next day. He had more energy. He was more focused. And at the time we thought, this is really weird. But he was onto something. Those little bits of light, they seem so insignificant. They seem silly. But we now understand that they add up to something we call light pollution. And what we realize is that if we're not getting into these deeper stages of sleep, because these lights are interfering with our brain releasing melatonin, it can be throwing off the brain wash. We actually see studies that are showing us that starting around the age of 65, if we're losing just 1% of our deep sleep, the risk of dementia goes up about 27%. And I know that can sound very scary. What we realize is that we can optimize our deep sleep. And something as simple as just tonight, do an experiment. Make your room just a little bit darker, unplug something that emits light, move it to another room, see how you feel tomorrow. We want to give our brain that darkness. We want our brain to get into those deeper stages of sleep and really get that good brain wash. One more quick tip on REM sleep. While all this electrical activity is happening in your brain, you're also sending another electrical signal down your spinal cord, paralyzing you from the neck down. And the reason why we're paralyzed from the neck down while we're dreaming is that so we don't act out our dreams. Now, we're not talking about just fidgeting a little bit or mumbling. We're actually talking about like getting out of bed and acting out a dream. That can be very dangerous for ourselves or somebody sleeping nearby. And this is something we want to be aware of. If somebody is acting out their dreams, we want to, get the help of a neurologist. It can be a warning sign of significant issues even down the road. But the key thing to remember is that we actually want to be paralyzed from the neck down while we're dreaming. That protects us, but also provides us some insights into our overall sleep cycle. So now let's take some take-home tips from our understanding of these three key steps: light sleep, deep sleep, and dreaming. Let's go back to what we talked about at the beginning. That game where you wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, you look at the clock, say, I can't believe I have to be up in, 3 or 4 hours. Horrible game. People end up in their doctor's office. They end up in sleep centers. They say, I can't get a good night's sleep. I'm waking up multiple times throughout the night. We now understand that you can wake up many times, multiple times, 4, 5, 6 times throughout the night and still get excellent sleep. You see, we're not concerned about the waking up. We're concerned about not getting back to sleep. What was happening in that 90-minute sleep cycle at the end? We're paralyzed from the neck down. And when we go back to the beginning of the next cycle, we move around a little bit, we get the blood flowing, but this is where we can run into trouble. We can look at the clock. We can think about all the things we didn't do yesterday or all the things we have to do tomorrow. And stress, worry, anxiety is the enemy of our brain's ability to get back into the next sleep cycle. So, what we really want people to be aware of is that it's okay to wake up. It's actually part of how we sleep. But we can be so concerned about getting a good night's sleep that the pressure and the stress and the worry doesn't allow us to get back into the next sleep cycle. So, just being aware, it's okay to wake up. It's how my brain works. If you wake up tonight in the middle of the night and you think, oh no, I'm not getting my brainwash, I'm more stressed than I've ever been, I wish I never heard any of this stuff, remind yourself you just had a brainwash. Very likely, you just finished a sleep cycle. We just want to get a few more washes and rinses throughout the night. So, how can we do that? Well, one thing is we don't want to look at the clock. There's actually studies that have been shown that if you turn the clock over, you put it in another room or far enough away from you, and we just allow our brain and body to say, you know what? It's okay to wake up. I don't need to check the clock every few minutes or every few hours. I know that when it's time to wake up, I'll wake up. We also realize that what we do in the hour before bed plays a really critical role in how well we sleep throughout the night and minimizing our inability to get back to sleep. So I want to ask you this question. How many phone numbers do you have memorized today versus, let's say, 10, 15 years ago? If you're like me, I used to have a lot of phone numbers memorized. Now it's really hard to memorize a phone number. Why is that? Well, once we take information and we store it somewhere safe, our brain goes, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not going to store it in my memory. I'm not going to waste precious resources. So scientists said, okay, let's use this to our advantage. What about if in the hour before bed, we have people get out an old fashioned pen and paper and just write down your worries, your thoughts, your to-do list, anything that has the potential to wake you up at 2 or 3 in the morning and you have that thought that you kind of can't let go of? What if we get it on paper before we go to sleep? Let go of it. It sounds so simple. But what they found in this study is that people who did this little simple trick, not only did they fall asleep faster, not only did they sleep better throughout the night, actually scanned their brain, they got better deep sleep. That's where the brainwash takes place. They got better REM sleep. That's when we make our memory stronger. But if they did wake up, they were more able to get back to sleep. And what we believe is happening is we tend to do one more chore, one more thing on our to-do list. And we just try to go to sleep. We treat sleep almost like a light switch. But for most people, it doesn't work that way. We have to let go of the stress and the worry. We actually believe that 60% of our issues with sleep are actually rooted in stress. So the simple trick is just one thing that we can do to let go of all the stress and the worry. If you wake up in the middle of the night and you have that thought swirling around your head, don't check your phone. That dose of light can make it hard to get back to sleep, but have a little pen and paper by your bedside, keep the light low and just write down that worrying thought. Say, this is safe. I'll deal with it in the morning. Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever had this moment where you're driving from maybe work to home or home to work or somewhere you go all the time, and you arrive at your destination, you say to yourself, how did I do that? I wasn't even paying attention. Very likely you were doing one of the most dangerous things you're going to do all day, and it's like you weren't even paying attention. Well, our brain loves to go on autopilot. It loves cues. If our brain sees a familiar pattern, like, oh, that street sign follows that street sign, follows that tree, I'm not going to waste precious resources. I'm just going to go on autopilot. This is why we have a hard time remembering if we locked the front door or closed the garage or turned off the stove, repetitive actions, and our brain goes on autopilot. We can use this to our advantage. In the hour before bed, pick something that's a cue to your brain that your brain recognizes, oh, this is the thing I always do before bed. Your brain can then go on autopilot to help you go to sleep. It could be anything. It could be light stretching. It could be boring reading. I've had people tell me they've been reading the same book for 20 years. That's perfect. It could be listening to soft music. It could be the mindfulness exercises we talked about in another episode, those stress relieving breathing exercises. So check out that episode. It could also be writing down your thoughts, your worries, that to-do list that we were talking about. It doesn't seem to matter what it is, as long as it's consistent and it's a cue to the brain that sleep is the next thing that I'm about to do. Let's say you've been lying in bed for about 20 to 30 minutes and you can't fall asleep. Should you tough it out, stay in bed, or should you get out of bed? Well, based upon how our brain works, we really want to get out of bed. The last thing we want to do is create the association or the cue that My bed is a place I don't sleep. My bed is a place I toss and turn. So consider keeping the lights low, not checking your phone, maybe doing some boring reading, light stretching, mindfulness exercises, writing down your worrying thoughts or your to-do list, and then getting back into bed. Just training our brain that the bed is a place I sleep. A lot of people these days, they sleep with their phone right by their bed, even in their hand while they're sleeping. And that can be really problematic because we wake up every 90 minutes and we can be checking it. And we don't need to be posting. Just left light sleep, about to go to deep sleep. Nobody needs to know. So the idea is that just taking our phone and even putting it out of our room, putting it to bed in another room so it's out of sight, out of mind, out of reach. We see that just that separation, that boundary can really help optimize our sleep. So I hope you leave this episode with some of the best things you can do to get the best night's sleep. And those insights can come from just understanding our sleep cycles, light sleep, deep sleep, and dreaming, and realizing that just some small, simple tips can go a long way. Think about keeping your room a little bit cooler, making your room a little bit darker, and understanding that it's okay to wake up. We wake up every 90 minutes. We just want to make sure we're getting back to sleep. And those simple tips of writing down our worrying thoughts, our to-do list, letting go before we fall asleep, and understanding that sleep is something we want to prioritize. We also don't want to put too much pressure on ourselves to get the best night's sleep every night. We just want to have a great night's sleep most nights. So I hope you get a great night's sleep tonight. Thanks for watching. Thanks so much for watching. If you'd like to receive one brain health tip per week, please sign up for my newsletter. The link is in the description in the show notes below. See you next time.